All right, Bible and Daily Lifers. We are going through the New Testament in a year, and we are in the book of First Corinthians. And we're at the passage where the Apostle Paul has been talking about spiritual gifts. Now, here's the thing about spiritual gifts with Corinth, the Corinthians. It seemed like that a lot of these Corinthian Christians were thinking that they were something super special, super spiritual, because they had some of these gifts. Now, Paul said that they were gifted for sure. They had lots of spiritual gifts. But spiritual gifts and godly character are not the same. They're not the same. These Corinthians, they had all kinds of problems. They had all kinds of carnal problems. They had all kinds of spiritual problems. The Apostle Paul starts by saying, you're divided, you're just following people. Some of you say I'm of Paul, some of you say I'm of Apollos, some of you say I'm of Peter. You guys are all divided, following after men instead of just being Christians who receive the ministry of different people. He got into their extreme sexual immorality where there was a guy who was sleeping with his father's wife, and they're all excited about the guy, just, letting him in. And then he talks about lawsuits, they're suing each other. And he said, you guys are all divided and you've lost already. And, why not rather just be wronged? He talks about their communion services. And he said, you guys are rude to each other. But in all of that, they had lots of spiritual gifts. Because the gifts don't have anything to do with our spiritual maturity, and they don't have anything to do with our spiritual growth, and they certainly don't make us spiritual heroes. They just make us people that have those gifts. So along with gifting, we need to constantly be growing in character. We need to constantly be growing in love. And so in the previous chapter 12, if you were with us, the apostle said there's all kinds of different gifts, and they work all kinds of different ways. And there seems to be, varying degrees of effectiveness with, different people who have the same gift. Then he talked about what a lot of those gifts were, and he talked about healings and words of knowledge. And here he talks about previous in chapter 12 of apostles and prophets and teachers and all of these things, tongues and interpretations of tongues. And then he ends that by saying this, I will show you the more excellent way. Well, what is the more excellent way? Is there a more excellent way? Yes. The more excellent way is love. And so even though people have spiritual power and spiritual gifts, it's really all about love. And this is known as the love chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians. An awful lot of people use this in weddings, which I think it's fine to use it in a wedding. It talks about love. But it's not so much talking about romantic love. It's talking about a love that actually is a lot of work to do these things. Here's what he says. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but don't have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. So you might have all kinds of spiritual gifts. But you know what? It's just a bunch of noise if you don't have love. So if you're using their spiritual gifts and you're stepping all over people and rude to people and living on all kinds of immorality, what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of noise. You need love, and love is demonstrated towards other people. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but I don't have love, I'm nothing. I'm absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter. All of that religious hype, all of that religious activity, it doesn't mean anything. It's love. It's love. Now, all of those things are good. I want to prophesy. I want to have a lot of faith. I want to work miracles. I want to have knowledge. But without love, it's not anything. It's moot. It's hypocrisy. If I give all I have to the poor, and I give my body to hardship that I might boast, but I don't have love, I gain nothing. So if I'm busy all the time just helping people and doing things in order to be seen, like Jesus said, if it's not love, it doesn't mean anything. Now, in this particular instance, Only you and God know whether you're operating out of love or not. So love is patient. I like the old King James. The old King James says that love is long-suffering, because that's what it is. Love suffers for a long time. So if you love somebody and you're going through difficulty with them, when do you give up? You don't. It suffers for a long time. Love suffers for a long time. Amazing to me that, people do stand up and say this at weddings, look at each other and say, love suffers for a long time. I might be suffering with you for a long time. Love is kind. Love doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. Well, that's what the Corinthians were doing with their spiritual gifts. They're boasting all about it. Look at me, watch me, see what I do. He's not proud, putting itself up, putting myself up in front of everybody. Look at me, how good I am. It doesn't dishonor others. Well, that's what the Corinthians were doing. Even with their gifts, dishonoring others. Look at the gift I have, you don't have it. It's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered. It doesn't keep any record of wrongs. I love that. I think so much of our problems that we have, our interpersonal issues, are that we're standing on a record of wrongs. What does that look like? It looks like this. It looks like you're in a conflict with somebody and you say, you always do that. You ever say that? Ever hear that? You always do that. Okay, let's examine it. Oh, when do I do that? When was the last time I did that? How often do I do that? Well, you always do it. Give me an example. Oh, remember last Christmas? Last Christmas, well, that was 8 months ago. What do you mean I always do it? You're standing on a record of wrongs, and when something similar happens again, you're right there. Get rid of the wrongs. Let go of this stuff. Keep short accounts. The Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Just forget about it. You always do that. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. So somebody's gossiping about somebody. Just stand up for them. Protect them. I used to paint houses, and one of the things we used to say about paint on houses is that paint covers a multitude of sin. Because sometimes people would ask us to paint over stuff that was rotten. I mean, the wood is rotten, and people say, well, just paint over it. We go, you can paint over it, but it's rotten. It's going to show up. Paint it. Paint covers a multitude of sin. Love covers a multitude of sin. Just cover it up. Just cover it up for people. It always trusts. I'm going to give you another chance. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. Faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. Where there are prophecies, they'll cease. Where there's tongues, they'll be stilled. Where there's knowledge, it'll pass away. We know in part and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, that which is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. Paul's talking about turning 13. That's the way it was for the ancient Jewish people. When I was a child, I talked like a child, thought like a child, reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, when I turned 13, I put all that stupid stuff behind me. Wow. For now we see as only a reflection in a mirror, then we'll see face to face when we're with him. Now I know in part, then I'll be fully known, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Wow, the greatest of these is love. Faith, hope, and love. Oh, Lord, help us to be people of love. Lord, if we're known for anything, let us be known as people who love. Lord, pour out on us spiritual gifts, all of these things, prophecy and knowledge and miracles and tongues and apostles and teachers and hospitality and all of these things, Lord. Pour it out on us. But Lord, may we be known as people who love. So may the Lord bless you, may he keep you, may he pour out his Spirit on you. May you know that you are loved, you are loved, you are loved, you are loved. And may you become a person who's known as a person who loves. Hey, bless you. Love you guys. Peace.